This will cover Chapter 14, Oligopoly Firms in Less Competitive Markets. In previous chapters, we had examined the perfect and monopolistic competition. We were able to use similar logic to argue how those firms would behave. They would produce all the way up until marginal cost equals marginal revenue, and the low barriers to enter would result in long-run profits being kept away. Oligopoly is a market structure in which there are a small number of interdependent firms compete. Will it require different tools to analyze, and why? Oligopolists are large and know that their actions have effect on one another, and barriers to enter exist, preventing firms from competing away profits. So before we analyze how oligopolists behave, it is useful to know which firms we are talking about. A useful tool for identifying the market structure is a four-firm concentration ratio. It's the fraction of an industry's sales that are accounted for by its four largest firms. A four-firm concentration ratio greater than 40 tends to indicate an oligopoly. Although there are limits on how useful this four-firm concentration ratio can be, it's useful in discussing the concentration of market power within an industry. So let's look at this: retail and manufacturing. Deep discount stores. The top four firms have 97% of sales. This is like Walmart, Target. Warehouse and clubs: BJ's, Sam's Club, Costco. The top four firms have 94% of this. College bookstores. The top four firms in college bookstores have 75% of this. Hobby, toy, and game stores, 72%. Radio, TV, and other electronics, 70%. Athletic footwear stores. Pharmaceutical and drug stores. Then if you look on the manufacturing side, the top four firms in manufacturing cigarettes own 98% of all sales. 90% of beer is in the top four firms. Computers, 87%. Aircrafts, 81%. Breakfast cereal, 80%. Dog and cat food, actually, 71%. And automobiles, 68%. So the point here is that this ratio is significantly more than 40%. So this indicates that these firms are operating in what is considered an oligopoly. Oligopolies exist because of barriers to enter. Anything that keeps new firms from entering an industry in which firms are earning an economic profit. One example of a barrier to enter is economies of scale. This is a situation when a firm's long-run average cost falls as the firm increases output. This can make it difficult for new firms to enter the market because the new firms usually have to start small, and hence they will have a higher average cost than the established firms. An industry will be competitive if the minimum point of the typical firm's long-run average cost curve, LRAC1, occurs at an output level that is a small fraction of the total industry. The industry will be an oligopoly if the minimum point comes at a level of output that is a large fraction of the industrial sales. This is a competitive industry. You can see how it's a smaller curve. This is an oligopoly. So why else do oligopolies exist? Two other components besides economies of scale are ownership of a key input. If control of a key input is held by one or a small number of firms, it will be difficult for other firms to enter the marketplace. An example, Alcoa is for aluminum production. De Beers, actually, they were very afraid when they started discovering, as you read the chapter, they started discovering more diamond mines. So they went ahead and they got together and they formed De Beers. So De Beers actually controls the supply of diamonds, and they also have a great marketing campaign, Diamonds Are Forever. Ocean Spray controls the majority of the cranberry bogs, so therefore if they own the cranberries, no one can really get into the marketplace of cranberry juice, right? And then there are also what we consider government-imposed barriers. Governments might grant exclusive rights to some industry or to a small number of firms or to one firm occupational licensing for dentists and doctors, or patents, which are exclusive rights to produce a product. So we're going to talk about gaming theory. Why do we need a specific theory for oligopolies? Perfect and monopolistic competitors were easy to analyze using a graph of their own costs and revenues. But remember, each of these firms were small relative to the market, so their actions were essentially insignificant. This is not true for oligopolies. Oligopolists are large relative to the market, and their actions of one oligopolist make differences in the profits of another. Oligopolies are best analyzed by using a specific field of study called the game theory. Game theory is a study of how people make decisions in situations in which attaining their goals depends on interactions with others. Game theory was developed in the 1940s and advanced by mathematicians and social scientists like economists. All games share certain characteristics. 1. Rules that determine what actions are allowed. 2. Strategies that players employ to obtain their objectives in the game. 3. Payoffs, which are the results of the interactions among the players. For example, we can model firm production as a game. The production functions of the market curves are the rules of the game, and the firm's production decisions are their strategies, and their profits are their payoffs. So, in this example, they use game theory to describe what's going to happen if there were just two computer companies, Dell and Apple. Dell's profits are in the blue. Apple's profits are in the red. Dell and Apple would make profits in this game theory of 10 million per month if they each sold desktop computers, if they both charged $1,200. So each of them would earn 10 million if they both charged 1,200. If one charges 1,200 and the other charges 1,000, the one with the lower price earns 15 million, while the other one earns 5 million. So knowing that Apple would charge 1,200, it's in Dell's best interest to charge 1,000 here, because they would earn 15 million, which is 5 million more. If both firms charge 1,000, they'll both make 7.5 million. How would you play this game? Suppose you are Dell in this duopoly game. A duopoly is an oligopoly with only two firms. If Apple charges 1,200, you earn more profit by charging 1,000. Either way, charging 1,000 seems to make the most profit. This is called a dominant strategy. A dominant strategy is a strategy that is best for the firm no matter what strategy the other firm uses. So Dell's options are 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, and 7.5 million. Of course, we can't confirm if they were going to sell at 1,000 then. So basically, if Dell sells at 1,000, they're earning more profit than if they sell at 1,200 up here. Suppose you're Apple. If Dell charges 1,200, you will earn more profit by charging 1,000. If Dell charges 1,000, you will earn more profit by charging 1,000. Therefore, either way, dominant strategy says Apple should charge 1,000. Each firm charging 1,000 is Nash equilibrium, a strategy in which the firm chooses the best strategy given the strategies chosen by other firms. Notice that the outcome is not good for Apple or Dell. If they could cooperate somehow, they could each earn 10 million instead. This is called collusion, an agreement among firms to charge the same price or otherwise not compete with each other. Collusion is against the law in the United States, but you can see why some firm might be tempted to collude. Their profits would be substantially higher. Economists and other social scientists refer to the situation where Apple and Dell are as a prisoner's dilemma, a game in which pursuing a dominant strategy results in non-cooperation that leaves everyone worse off. The name comes from a problem faced by two suspects that are arrested for the crime. The police offer each suspect a suspended prison sentence in exchange for confessing to the crime and testifying against the other. Each suspect has a dominant strategy to confess, but if both confess, they both go to jail for a long time, while they both could have gone to jail for a very minimal amount of time if they had just remained silent. In the book, they give you an example about how actually the second highest bid price pays off. The higher bidder wins, and it's a function of the second price auctions. An intuitive strategy would be to bid on eBay is to shade your bid or bidding somewhat less than your valuation. But this intuition is correct. In fact, bidders have a dominant strategy in eBay. Suppose you're bidding for a concert ticket worth $200. If you bid less than $200, you win, but you pay the same as if you had bid $200. So there was no advantage. If you lose, if someone bids more than $200, then you would have lost anyway. But if you're the winning bid and was less than 200, and you will wish you had bid 200. So basically, the highest bid wins, but they get the second price in eBay. I'm not going to cover this in more detail. So another method, other methods for avoiding price competition. One way is to price match. That's what was on the last one. So just understand that price matching is an enforcement mechanism that will automatically make the decision about whether to punish a competing firm for charging a lower price. This is not colluding. It's just saying if the firm charges a lower price, Walmart will price match. Another method is price leadership. It's a form of implicit collusion in which one firm in an oligopoly announces a price change and the other firms match that. This happened in the 1970s when GM would announce a price change at the beginning of the year and Ford and Chrysler would match GM's price change. Such forms of implicit collusion are desirable for firms because explicit is illegal, implicit is not, and results in government fines and penalties, and along with public backlash. So they can't get together and outright talk about doing this, but they could do it by having a price leader. With price collusion, more is not the merrier. Airlines are a good example of an oligopoly. Airlines often implicitly collude, having unspoken understandings with one another not to compete on price. If one airline cuts the price, the others will retaliate, decreasing industry profits overall, since airline travel is relatively price inelastic. Thus, the same route is often identically priced by several different airlines. Implicit understandings like these are easier to enforce with fewer competitors, which helps to explain why price competition often results when new firms enter the marketplace. One example of a cartel, which is a group of firms that collude by agreeing to restrict output to increase prices and profits. OPEC is the oil cartel. This form of explicit collusion is illegal in the United States, but not universally. The most well-known cartel is OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. OPEC members colluded to restrict output and raise prices in the 1970s and 1980s. This is oil prices, and this is oil prices measured in dollars of 2011 purchasing power. But collusion proved difficult to maintain over time. The reason is that because Saudi Arabia can produce much more oil than Nigeria, its output decisions have a much larger effect on the price of oil. Saudi Arabia has a dominant strategy to cooperate and produce a low output. Nigeria, however, has a dominant strategy not to cooperate and instead produce high output. When Nigeria produces more, they make more money. But when Saudi Arabia produces more, they don't actually make more money. So in order to punish Nigeria for defecting, Saudi Arabia would have to hurt itself substantially. Would it be worth it to you? So there are sequential games in business strategy as well. The gaming models we have analyzed have so far been simultaneous. We're playing at the same time. The players have made their decisions at the same time. But there are generally sequential games in nature. One firm makes a decision, and then the other makes its decision, having observed the first firm's decision. When analyzing such games, there's a decision tree to indicate how one gets to a decision at what point and what consequences there'll be. This is an example of a decision tree. I'm not going to go too much through this. I am going to talk about the 5 competitive forces model. Use the 5 competitive forces model to analyze competition in an industry. Michael Porter of Harvard Business School identifies 5 separate competitive forces that determine the overall level of competition in an industry. 1. Existing firms. Educational Testing Services, or SATs, had 2 existing forms, the SAT and the GRE. The SAT has competition from ACT, but the GRE has no competitor. The second is threats from new entrants. In the previous section, Apple charged a lower price to deter Dell from entering the marketplace. There's also competition from substitutes. Printed encyclopedia sets used to cost well over $1,000, but parents would buy them uh, because there were no good substitutes. But the advent of cheap computer-based encyclopedias have helped drive printed encyclopedias out of business. Bargaining powers of buyers. Large companies like Walmart can threaten to buy goods from competitors, forcing suppliers to keep their prices low. Bargaining power of suppliers. As a startup, Microsoft couldn't force IBM to pay the high price for its operating system, but as Microsoft became a dominant player in the operating systems, it could charge much more to computer manufacturers. The question asked in making the connection is, can we predict which firms will continue to be successful? In general, it's very difficult to predict which companies will be successful long term. For example, 2002 Circuit City was identified as a company that might achieve enduring greatness. In 2009, they filed for bankruptcy. Enduring greatness and continuing economic profits require a firm to constantly maintain its advantage. A good dose of luck goes a long way as well. So, some misconceptions to avoid when analyzing game theoretic situations: stick to the rules of the game. And then obvious answers are often not correct when analyzing strategies. For example, price match guarantees are actually good for firms and much less good for consumers. And this is the oligopoly chapter.